Chapter 1. The Prodigal Daughter. St. John, Minnesota, May 1897. Lily knew all about monsters, so when she stepped off the train at St. John Depot, she took precautions. First, she pulled her green bonnet down so low that she could only see a few feet in front of her. Not that I don't know every inch of the way home and could walk it with my eyes closed. Next, she made sure her matching green cape was tightly closed at the neck and waist. Under it, she wore a cheap striped cotton dress and black boots that climbed halfway up her calves. It also hid her braid that fell down the middle of her back. No one standing on the platform can know I'm Chippewa under this. Satisfied, she moved quickly, carrying her satchel in front of her with both hands. Ahead of the crowd, she reached the baggage quickly, spotted her bane, the chest holding all of her worldly goods. Act like you know where you're going. Move with purpose. Across the street, she saw locals coming out of the Bonnie Lass Hotel and Saloon to greet the train. Even though the chest weighed almost as much as she did, she found the strength to grip one of the side handles with her gloved hand and drag it along the platform by the smooth metal corners. Need help with that, miss? Lily kept her eyes low. No, thank you. I only have a short walk. It was a lie to keep monsters away, even well-intentioned monsters. The train platform stretched 50 yards from end to end, with stairs at each end and one at the center. Lily chose the northernmost stairs to avoid the crowd that waited to board. She then let gravity do the work as the chest bounced down the stairs. It took all of her strength to keep the large chest from toppling completely. Once down, she made for First Presbyterian Church of St. John. Even from the train depot, First Presbyterian Church could be seen. In fact, its steeple was the tallest thing in the town of almost 1,000, none of which were Chippewa. Hurry, hurry. She heard the heavy boots approaching before they entered her narrow line of sight. Shit. Brown boots, leather guards over thick denim pants, and a holstered pistol came into sight. Half the men of St. John looked like this, but only one used a black walking stick. Only one wore the distinctive vest with black and gray stripes. Only one wore a silver star belonging to the U.S. Marshals. Jananishins, the little Englishman. Well, look who's back in Hiawatha County. Is that Squeak's daughter? Lily paused, not knowing what to say or do. She flinched when the ebony walking stick rose toward her face, but instead of striking her, it gently caught her under the chin, lifting it so she looked right into the eyes of a monster. If it isn't Squeak's little girl, all grown up. Bushy Bill Morrison wore a circular derby hat as black as his droopy mustache. At the end of the ebony walking stick, his hand gripped a metallic skull. Dressed up like a lady, huh? Looks like the Sisters of Mercy have civilized another pagan. Send your father my regards. I wish I could. I wish you would arrest him. Then I'd never have to deal with him again. The silver tip dropped from her chin, and he walked back to the Bonnie Lass Saloon without another word. Lily hurried away from the train depot, her chest thudding in the dirt behind her. I'm glad I didn't wet myself right then and there. Even though she kept a quick pace, her heart calmed the further away from Bushy Bill she got. Hopefully, he chased away any other monsters lurking at the station. With her last bit of strength, she hauled the chest up the front steps of the church, opened the heavy front door, and called out, "Minister Kirkpatrick?" No one stirred, so she let the door shut behind her as she pulled her Bane over to the alcove coat hangers and shoved it in the corner. Minister Kirkpatrick? More silence. She opened the front door again, looking out at the town of St. John. New sidewalks, new buildings, new street lamps, lots of strangers. Lily closed the front door and walked along the side of the pews. Even in an empty church, she tried to be discreet. Minister Kirkpatrick, she called out a third time once she reached the office doorway. Inside the interior of the Presbyterian Church, was different than a Catholic church. Fewer statues, fewer paintings, everything felt more open. My chest won't be in the way, though. The chest could stay for a few days, allowing her time to return with a wagon or help to haul it home. It also freed her from the burden of traveling with it. Slipping out the back door, she darted for the eastern side of town, lifting her eyes only to scan her surroundings before she started on the familiar path home. In 5 minutes, St. John no longer posed a threat, and she slowed her pace as she walked on the road heading east. All the trees had been cut down around the town, leaving grassy fields that provided plenty of visibility. Nothing can jump out at me here. To the north, the old forest loomed dark and green. To the south, the shimmering waters of Lake Manitou beckoned. Finally alone. With a final glance to make sure no one had followed her out of town, she went about removing her armor, tucking the bonnet and cape into her satchel. She next pulled her cross pendant out so it could reflect upon her chest. The hard-packed gravel road always made the trip to town the easiest part, but when the road sloped down near the shore of Lake Manitou, Lily walked down the ditch and entered the dark woods. After slipping through the brush, she stood under the protection of a tall canopy of pine, birch, and towering sugar maples. Light still filtered through the foliage, but the air was cool and still. The woods will never change. I'm home. A few yards in, Lily dropped her satchel and unlaced her boots. A carpet of pine needles and leaf mulch covered the dark woods, and even though 6 years of wearing shoes had softened the calluses on her feet, she had no problem keeping a steady pace as she finished the second half of her journey home. Mother will be baking at her stove, and McGeesy will be playing at the river. That brought a smile to her face. She began singing one of her favorite hymns, "It is well with my soul." So consumed with her own feelings and vibration of music within her, Lily failed to notice the eyes upon her until it was almost too late. It took 5 steps for her to raise the alarm. It's cold here. She stopped and listened. No birds. Why didn't I notice that? Her eyes scanned the dark woods, but neither the smiling white boy at the depot nor bushy Bill Morrison hid behind the trees. Nor was there a pack of boys leering from the shadows of a crease in the earth. Her hands clutched the cross at her chest, but her legs obeyed an older tradition, and she crouched until she sat upon her heels, listening. Setting the satchel down, she spread her hand upon the cold earth, trying to understand the pounding of her heart and the warning cries in her brain that left every hair on her neck and arms standing on end. Jibe. The old word brought no comfort to her terror, so she turned to her crucifix to recite Psalm 23. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. And then no more. The words wouldn't come. Her eyes scanned the mulch, trying to spot any obvious sign of danger. Yet no physical danger presented itself, except for Yellow eyes stared down at her from a branch in an ancient maple. Its ears listened to her pounding heart and shallow breathing. It's not a monster. It's just an owl. The agoo-coo-coo warned of evil and death. The forest would go silent, and a cold patch of ground would appear on the forest floor. Lily could not ignore the omen. She partially rose, keeping her head lowered. When nothing attacked, she grabbed her satchel and slowly backed up while keeping an eye on the owl. After retreating several paces, she paused to make a decision. Going south meant going close to the lake, and going back made no sense at all. If she went north a bit, then perhaps... Suddenly her feet were flying. She ran, leaving the owl in the cold spot on the forest floor behind. Even though she traveled up and down small hills, the unmarked path took her ever uphill toward the rocky hills that held the Blue Knife River. As she ran, she tried not to think of the owl or the possible Jibe hiding under the mulch. Instead, she thought of the happy Greyhawk family living just a few 100 yards away. Even though Lily's family was separated from the Greyhawks by the Blue Knife River, they were the nearest neighbors to visit during times of drought. Rose Greyhawk had 5 older children, including a daughter who was 16, a year older than Lily. Fred Greyhawk was a lumberjack, and with saw and blade, he not only crafted the sturdiest home on the reservation, but also built a log bridge that passed over the Nicollet Rapids. Fearing the arrival of the owl's extended talons ready to grab her face and rip out her soul, Lily did not turn around to see if anything followed her out of the dark woods. The nearer she got to the river, the more patches of exposed stone appeared, thinning the dense forest. Finally, she came running out of the forest to see the deep channel of the Blue Knife River stretching from the distant pines forests of the north to Lake Manitou, just a mile or so away. Her feet rested and her lungs struggled to catch up. She was safe. Nothing followed her. Yet something terrible presented itself instead. The Greyhawk cabin had been burned to the ground. Chapter 2. The Place of Souls. The barn, the storage shed, the chicken coop, all of it was gone. Lily jumped around the small perimeter of the house, trying to understand how a fire had jumped from building to building, leaving nothing but charcoal. While the house had been built on a scenic outcropping of stone overlooking the river, the bridge once stood at the bottom of the hill in a small gully. Not only could Lily see the old posts still sticking up out of the riverbed, but she could also see a lean brown figure standing upon a rock in the flowing waters. McGeesy. All of her fears and even curiosities vanished when she saw her younger brother perched like a heron in the river. Although 9 years old, McGeesy was more like an older brother. Nothing scared him, including owls or jibe. "Hey," she called out to him, waving her free arm over her head. "Two," he called back, waving his arm, still holding a spear. She ran down the slope of the bluff, hopping from rock to rock rather than taking the path made by the Greyhawk family. McGeesy jumped right into the river, sloshing through the water to meet her at a place where the footbridge once stood. Lily tossed her satchel onto dry ground and rushed into the water to hug her brother, who threw his spear on the bank and returned the hug. "Oh, I'm so glad to be home," she said, lifting him off his feet. "You're early," McGeesy said between chuckles. She set him back down, putting her hand upon his head. You've really grown this past year. You're almost a man. You look like a Gichi Mukuman in those clothes. She huffed. I was traveling, so I had to dress the part. You're early. You wrote you weren't coming until Thursday. I needed to get out of White Earth, so I changed tickets. Sister Lynch telegraphed Minister Kirkpatrick, but I suppose you didn't get the message, did you? I guess not, or we would have met you at the train station. I just left my trunk with Minister Kirkpatrick. So what happened with the Greyhawks? Are they okay? McGeesy walked over to retrieve his spear. They sold their lot and moved up to Leech Lake. Sold it? Sold it to who? Triton Logging. Everyone along the western shore has sold their land and moved away. It's really quiet now that they're gone. So there wasn't an accident? In a way. Teddy Big Martin died in a hunting accident, but the Greyhawks just moved. Bushy Bill and some white guys from St. John came and burned it all down. Why would they want lots along the Blue Knife when there's good farmland just outside of town? McGeesy shrugged. Maybe they like to fish, or trap, or hunt. The river valley is the last bit of old forest. There's all sorts of stuff living in these woods. I think I saw the horned serpent swimming in the river. So I'll protect you while you cross. I'm not going to comment on that. Wait, the bridge is gone. Did the Triton men tear down the bridge too? Yep. Mom raised quite a fuss, but they knocked it down since half of it was on their side of the river. I just walk across, but she goes all the way up to Nimrod Crossing now. Lily knew the routine of crossing the river, having done it hundreds of times. She walked over the rough gravel until her bare feet sunk into the wet gravel. It's going to be a cold walk. The shiver made her remember her fear. So what happened to Teddy Big Martin? Shot himself in the leg last fall, so his wife took the Triton off her and left with the kids. Did it happen west of here? Yeah, Fred Greyhawk found him dead, leaning against a tree. Why? I think I felt a ghost. I guess that makes sense. He and his whole family became Christian, just like my sister Tuwapa. McGeesy gave her crucifix a dirty look. What does that have to do with anything? And my name is Lily now. Grandfather says that any of our people who become Christian will be stuck on earth as ghosts instead of traveling to the River of Souls. Teddy Big Martin was a Christian, so you probably felt his ghost haunting the woods where he died. Nana Conan is a crazy old man, and you should stop listening to his stories. Especially stories about owls. Owls belong in the woods. It's normal. You're the one who brought up ghosts. McGeesy hopped up onto a rock in the middle of the river. Go ahead. I'll keep an eye out for the horned serpent while you cross. Lily held tighter to her satchel, and seeing no other choice, walked out into the river. She did her best to gather up her dress to keep it dry, and luckily the water level was low for May, letting her cross in knee-deep water. You probably just saw a pike or sturgeon, by the way, not the horned serpent. It was big. McGeesy stretched his arms out wide. There's no fish this wide. And you think you're Ayash reborn now? Are you going to kill it with your little spear? The thought of the monster of Lake Manitou hunting for victims in the Blue Knife River chilled her. Maybe I should have gone back to Morris to work with Sister Lynch. At her brother's huff, she shuddered. She could feel the magic lingering in the air around her home, and she felt like Tuwapa again, a little girl full of fear and doubt. Once she reached the rocky shore, McGeesy came bouncing across the river to join her. The Blue Knife River's channel cut through stone, littering the shore with boulders and rocks of all sizes, leaving a steep slope that forced them to walk to the nearest gully to climb out. So soon home came into view. It looked so small and sad. Home was a cheaply built cabin of planks, beams, tar paper, wooden shingles, and a smokestack in the center. Seeing the smoke rising, Lily burst forward. Approaching the rear of the property, she saw the two windows, both four-paned glass, where the two bedrooms were found. A covered porch faced east, with a new screen door over the heavy old door. "Hey, Mama," she called out as she stepped onto the little porch. The screen door flung open. "Two! Oh, my Tawapa is home!" Willie Weber was 40 and almost as wide as she was tall. To any Zaganash, she was just another Indian, but to both the Sioux and Chippewa of Minnesota, she was an outcast, born of two enemies. During a battle between the rival tribes, Lily's Chippewa grandfather had claimed a Sioux woman as a slave after defeating a camp of trespassers along the edge of the Big Woods. Winnie was the result of that. "I have Sioux cheeks," her mother often bragged, "and also Chippewa cheeks." These remarks were often followed by a slap on her round backside. Although once a great beauty, her skill as a cook ruined her figure. But she gives the best hugs. "Come, sit, let me feed you. I was just making lunch for your brother." Her mother prodded her through the doorway. "Sit, sit." Lily didn't sit for long, and soon stood side by side with her mother as a simple lunch turned into a feast. In 10 minutes, 9 months of events were summarized for both women, and by the time McGeesey joined them at the table, even details like her trunk had been discussed. "If things went so well teaching at White Earth, I don't understand why you didn't sign another contract for next year. What are you doing here?" "I want to be a regular teacher." "There's no way they're going to let you teach white children." "Not at first, but Sister Inez at St. Marie's Catholic Church in Split Rock said I could assist her for her Sunday's lessons. Apparently, most of these white kids skip school to help out on the farm, and the only education they get is after church on Sundays. She says she has her hands full." "Does it pay?" "No, but with a year's experience at White Earth and a year working with white children, I'll have 2 legs to stand on if a good position does open up. Teaching white kids pays twice as much as working at White Earth." "You know how things are around here. For all I know, your father could be in jail right now." "I'll help you with the garden, then," Lily replied. "If I don't take a risk, how am I supposed to get ahead in life?" Her mother hummed. "It would be nice to have some help, and you could help tame those squatters upstream, as well as your brother." McGeesey's busy fork stopped. "I don't need a teacher. Grandfather Nanaconan is teaching me all I need to know." Mother and daughter shared eye rolls. "Yes," Winnie said. "I think it will be nice to have you around." "Two saw a ghost," McGeesey announced, and then continued shoveling food in his mouth. Winnie straightened. "You did?" It was nothing. I was just nervous walking through the woods." "You never used to be afraid of the woods." "It's probably the ghost of Teddy Big Martin," McGeesey remarked around a mouthful. "Quit putting words in my mouth. It was nothing, Mom." Winnie leaned back in her chair, eyes wide. "It wouldn't surprise me if you did encounter a ghost. It rained for 3 straight days." "What does that have to do with anything?" "Long before your father's people called this place Lake Manitou, my people once guarded these shores. Wars were fought over it." "They protected the wild rice fields?" "They didn't protect, they guarded. You see, to my people, this was not only a sacred place, but also a cursed place. It was known as Winagiata, which translates as place of souls. Lakes with wild rice fields are plentiful, but this place, Lake Manitou, traps any soul that dies near it, whether Chippewa, Sioux, or even white. My ancestors guarded it to keep folks away from it, but when it rains, some of the souls wander away, trying to find rest in the afterlife. You're just making this up to frighten me, Lily said. McGeesy giggled. Winnie shrugged. Go ask Adam Thunderface at the Loose Goose Saloon. Even a brute like him would know this story. Nanak said he's a liar, McGeesy said. Samuel Thunderface is a liar, Lily thought. He told me his father was taking them back to South Dakota. Otherwise, I might not have. Oh, Lily, don't mind me. I didn't mean to frighten you about ghosts. I need to be a better Christian, I suppose. Why would you want to live here if it was haunted? Lily asked, putting thoughts of Samuel away. And go where? Your father's people despise me because I'm Sioux, but if I went back to South Dakota, my Sioux relatives would only see a Chippewa. If I'm cursed, I may as well live in a cursed place that nobody wants. Except Triton. Lily followed McGeesy's example and let food cut off the conversation. When she finished, she pushed the bowl away with a sigh. Thank you for the wonderful meal. Do you want help cleaning up, or can I unpack my satchel? I can manage the dishes, but when you finish unpacking, you need to go visit Grandfather Nanak. Although he won't admit it, I think he misses you. Swallowing became difficult, so she meekly nodded, thinking, I'd rather go hang out with the ghost of Big Teddy Martin. And end scene. Nice page. Chapter 3. Revealer of Hidden Truths. Lily waited until just before supper to make the trek to visit her paternal grandfather, Nanakonan. Even though he was her closest blood relative, he was strange, embracing the old ways. McGeesy, want to come with me? McGeesy nodded with enthusiasm. Of course, I love visiting grandfather. Lily led the way. In just a few steps, they left the nurtured gardens and cabin of their mother to wander into the 40 acres of untouched woods that belonged to their father. She kept her head down, watching her feet on the worn trail. 7 miles north at the town of Nimrod Crossing, the trails connected the land allotments given to her people. Most of the lots were only a few acres wide, leaving the best farmland for white settlers. Lily understood why she walked in shadow. Anyone walking upon the trail could not be seen from the Nimrod Road. McGeesy ran along the top of the bluff, which overlooked the fertile Blue Knife River. McGeesy, don't get so close. Lily didn't see the Nicollet Rapids. She could hear them. Grandfather lived on the southernmost lot of the reservation, from the Nicollet Rapids to where the valley opened up to dump into Lake Manitou. Lily spotted the single stone marking the beginning of their grandfather's lot as McGeesy gradually angled back to the trail, joining her for the final stretch. Just past the rapids, a squatty structure stood a few yards from this steep ravine. If a giant beaver gobbled up a dozen trees and spit them out in a pile, there would be not much to distinguish it from what stood in front of Lily. She understood the spiritual significance behind a sweat lodge, but since leaving home and having stood in several beautiful churches, she felt shame for once having held the lodge in such reverence. I'm going to be trained to be a firekeeper, McGeesy stated suddenly. Don't you have to be a man? Grandfather says I'm special, which is why I get to begin my training early. First, I'll learn how to be a firekeeper, then a midday, and after that, a Jessicid. A what? Lily knew firekeepers were like Catholic priests, men who performed sacred rituals. A midday was also like a priest, with duties of a doctor, judge, and historian mixed in also. Typically, it took years of training. What's a Jessicid? McGeesy wrinkled his forehead. It's someone who has been blessed by Manabozo with the ability to communicate with spirits. Nanak says the reason I can hunt and fish so well is that I can hear the spirits in nature. He says our family has a history of it. Like you sensing that ghost. The nuns would say he's a sorcerer. Please don't say anything to grandfather about the ghost or it'll get weird. I just want to say hello and leave. His cabin gives me the creeps. It's a good thing I returned, or else McGeesy is going to be trapped in the past, too. A few minutes later, the valley widened to reveal the sprawling waters of Lake Manitou. At a cabin perched on a bluff overlooking the whole 7 miles of waterfront, grandfather normally sat in a wooden chair keeping a silent vigil. Today, he stood facing the trail. So you are the reason the spirits are all astir, he said once they drew close enough. It's good to see you too, Grandfather Nanak. What did they do to you at White Earth? Lily felt a lump in her throat, and her heart began racing. How could he know? She calmed herself, pushing the faces from White Earth from her memory. What do you mean? Those clothes. Do they force you to wear them even when you are home? His eyes inspected everything down to her shoes. I'm a teacher now, not a little girl. Lily Weber, he said with disdain. He rushed by her and wrapped his arms around grandfather. Soon she'll make me call her Miss Weber. I just know it. Lily Weber. Bah. Come, let me get a good look at you. Grandfather stayed at the top deck of his deck, and even with Lily standing a foot below on the first step, he barely managed to look down at her. After 7 decades, life turned his skin to wrinkled leather, hunched his back, and took most of his teeth. He extended his worn hands and clamped them onto her shoulders. She looked down while he made strange grunts and hums, contrasting his worn moccasins with her crisp boots. I see you wear the cross like your mother. She nodded. He let go and returned to his chair. Lily and McGeesy sat upon the floor of the porch in front of his chair. She glanced into the cabin, where all manner of disgusting sights hung from the rafters and walls. Dead birds, animal hides, and skulls decorated the walls like macabre wallpaper. The rafters were a gallows of herbs and dream catchers. Did you meet the son of Big Birch? Yes, I honored your wish, but I'm not going to marry William. But Samuel Thunderface, you will need to meet John Labiche. John Labiche? Lily shook her head. He's McGeesy's age, and plus, he's our cousin. Our clan must be preserved through careful marriage, and a marriage to John Labiche would produce a powerful child. My watch is almost at an end, and in another decade, our family must be prepared for the return of the Serpent Star. Who's John Labiche? McGeesy asked. He's a student at Sacred Heart in Morris, Lily explained through gritted teeth. The boarding school? Yes, grandfather answered, and in a few years he will be a man. How does a teacher not understand the importance of preparing the next generation? Why does he always put me down? John won't be able to marry me until he is released, and at the rate he's going, it might be a while. The thought of marrying him was horrible to Lily. Who says he'd even want to marry me? He will do his duty just like all of us must. I have a duty to my people and to find a place in the future, not marry a child. If I'm going to marry someone, it'll be a good Christian man who doesn't have dead animals and birds hanging all over his house. Grandfather shook his head, dismissing her like usual. There are those who can serve the will of the Great Spirit and those who dwell in darkness. Can there not be hidden truths shared by all? Not according to Sister Lynch. Two saw a ghost on her walk through the old woods, McGeesy said with a glance at Lily. He loves grandfather more than he loves me. I've been away for too long. Grandfather put a hand on McGeesy's shoulder as if rewarding him, and Lily looked away. A ghost? Why do you think it was a ghost? I didn't say it was a ghost, Lily mumbled. I felt cold, and I thought I saw something move in the pine needles, but I think it was just the owl in the tree. This is why you must stop wasting your time learning another religion and learn the beliefs of your own people. An Point to which bird it looked like. McGeesy used his walking stick to point to the dead birds hanging on the nearest cabin wall. Maybe it's the ghost of Big Teddy Martin, McGeesy offered, receiving a stern look from Grandfather. Both of you must be careful, especially after strong rains. While it certainly might have been a ghost, it might have been a talk pie. No, I am not listening to more of this nonsense. Lily stood. I've spent too much of my childhood afraid of the little people of the forest. She stood, took her brother by the crook of his arm, and tugged him to his feet. As much as I'd like to stay, I'm really hungry after my trip, and I need to help my mother with supper. But Lily pinched McGeesy hard. Wait, I have something for you. Stay. Nana Conan rose and scurried into his cabin. This past winter, once the lake froze over, I traveled across the lake to Jibe-Wadena to gather branches from Old Willow. Branches from Ghost Hollow? No, thank you. But Grandfather moved swiftly to the door. Here, he said, holding out a large dream catcher. If there is indeed the ghost of a dead Christian lurking around the woods, this will protect you while you sleep. Hang it in your window, and it'll protect you. I grew up surrounded by your dream catchers, Grandfather. I know the stories. He didn't hand it to her. Instead, he handed it directly to McGeesy. Once you are a trained Jessup kid, I will teach you how to communicate with the spirits trapped within the web. But until that day, shake the web out each morning. Understood? McGeesy studied the new web as Lily stepped away. Unlike the other dream catchers, Grandfather's webs were always teardrop-shaped, with the thick end of the willow branch crossing the thin end to create a V shape above the oblong loom. An assortment of feathers hung from the leather straps, and bits of wood, stone, and bone hung in the webbing. Once out of sight of Grandfather, Lily stopped walking. Tell Mother I'll be coming in about a half an hour, okay? Where are you going? I'm going to run up to Lyons to let everyone know I'm back. I thought you were hungry. Lily could see the Loose Goose Saloon in the distance, and thinking of Samuel Thunderface, her heart skipped a beat. I am hungry, but not for food, little brother. Chapter 4. The Loose Goose. Lily stood in the shadow of the white ice building, waiting for Samuel Thunderface to step out of the back door of the Loose Goose Saloon. Decades ago, the hill had been a logging camp, but now it was simply known as Lyons, even though only one family lived there. The village consisted of several old logging sheds, a small barn, a simple house, and a massive log structure known as the Loose Goose Saloon. After a year in White Earth, she now understood why her mother insisted she never set foot near a bar. What does it matter now? I'm no longer an innocent girl looking for love. A few yards from Nana Conan's property line and within range of the trees, she stood beside the building used to house huge blocks of ice cut from the lake and stored all summer long. Samuel Thunderface was a full-blood Sioux. Which meant he was taller, stronger, and far more handsome than the other young men she'd known. He had fine ebony hair that flowed down his muscular shoulders, and had soft lips that When the back door opened, Lily's breath caught. Only it was Samuel's older sister that came stomping out, holding an empty crate. Evangeline walked directly toward the storage shed, and while she fumbled with the lock, Lily stepped away from the ice building. Evangeline flinched when she saw Lily. A scowl settled on her once placid face before she asked, "When did you get back?" "Just today. I was wondering if Samuel was working tonight." "No, Samuel's not working." Evangeline crossed her arms. "He's at Flandreau." "South Dakota?" Lily's heart stopped. "What's he doing in Flandreau?" "Living there." Evangeline turned and headed for the saloon door. She stopped and glanced back, her expression cold. "Did you expect him to stay and wait for you? You broke his heart when you left for White Earth, and my dad didn't like him sulking, and one thing led to another, and after a big fight, my dad threw him out of the house. So he went to live with family at the Flandreau Reservation." A beating had first sent Samuel into her arms, and as she had tenderly wiped away blood from his split lip and bloodied nose, he had leaned in for their first kiss. Now she bit her lip, but he wasn't there to take care of her. How could he just leave? When did he leave? "October," Evangeline shrugged. "Listen, too. He's moved on. He's got himself a woman now, and he's finally free of my father. Now run along before I find a rock." Lily glanced at the back door, where a dozen small rocks were lined up on the railing of the staircase. Over the past few years, Adam Thunderface used them to chase away children from the reservation. McGeesy had a scar hidden by his hair. Evangeline, who'd once been a friend and ally, kicked one of the rocks off the staircase toward her as a warning. Lily retreated for the trees, not once looking back. After 100 paces, she flopped down under a cedar tree and began sobbing. The first tender kiss from a bleeding lip. Later, the way the straw refused to let go of her hair and skin afterwards. Did he find out what happened to me? Pine needles were crushed underneath her palms. No, he left in October because his father drove him away. But why did he find another? As Lily sobbed for her loss, she heard something approach. In that moment, it didn't matter if it was a ghost, a talk pie, a twisting serpent, or a group of drunk boys. She needed to let it all out. Grandfather appeared in front of her. Did the birds really speak to him? He crouched down as she wiped her face. "They are a family of outcasts and murderers, all of them. It is good you are rid of them." "I thought we were the outcasts." Lily looked away. "Why did he go all the way to Flandreau?" Lily felt a hand upon her shoulder, a gesture so tender she looked up to confirm it was indeed her grandfather. She looked down at his damaged hand with twisted pink scars and absent fingernails. I wonder how he got those scars. They must have hurt. Her grandfather knew emotional pain also. Her paternal grandmother, Little Wolf, had died long ago in childbirth. But now she understood Nanek's bitterness. Now I have scars too. It is good that the boy returned to the West where he belongs. When I was young, his family tried to take Lake Manitou by force. They killed my aunt and mother. Later, they stole land intended for our people to sell alcohol. The Thunderface boy isn't worth your tears and heartache. They are all liars and outcasts. Thank you, grandfather. Now, stand up. You are a survivor. The blood of survivors flows in your veins. Our clan has endured hardships from the Atlantic all the way to Lake Manitou. Not that this boy claim power over you. You are the one with power. She took her scarred hands and stood, briefly wrapping her arms around him. finding him suddenly smaller than she remembered him as a child. Go to your mother. She'll know what to say. Chapter 5. Caught in the Web. The specter of Samuel Thunderface was soon forgotten, and a week later, Lily had her life back in order. Her collection of cotton dresses hung up on wooden posts, with her 3 pairs of shoes below. Her traveling bane had been retrieved, and the heavy trunk now served as a desk for her collection of books given to her by Sister Inez, who'd been her inspiration for wanting to become a teacher. After visiting her mentor in Split Rock and receiving the books, she had promised to have them all read by the following Sunday. But the nun only chuckled and said, "Assist first, then lead." In the dresser, the drawers were stuffed by category. Underwear and stockings remained in the top drawer out of sight of McGeesee. Her casual wear used around the kitchen or in the garden filled the second drawer. The third drawer held the clothing that no longer fit. The bottom drawer held her Chippewa clothing, some casual and some ceremonial. A new start. A new me, Miss Weber. Grandfather's dream catcher hung in the window of their shared bedroom, and an 8-inch iron crucifix was on the top of the dresser. Balance. Lily stepped out of the bedroom and kissed her mother on the cheek. "Would you like to plant the squash today?" "I was just thinking that it's finally warm enough to grow, and with the clouds, we'll be sheltered from the sun. We'll need those seeds in the ground just before it rains." Farming, the future of my people. Why don't more follow my mother's example? The garden was tiny in comparison to the acres of open field belonging to Christopher Apple, who farmed right up to the property line of the reservation. For a family of 3, the plot gave enough food to last a year, if properly preserved. Yet back in Morris or White Earth, farming was a sign of defeat. Winnie hummed hymns while she worked, and Lily joined for those she knew. Finally, she broke the humming with a question. "Why did you marry Father?" "Because he was the most handsome boy I'd ever seen." "But he was Chippewa." She smiled. "So was I. You are only half Chippewa. Most of the Mille Lacs Chippewa are mixed blood also. Or were. Doesn't seem like tribe matters anymore. We're all Indians to the government." Back at White Earth, I met families coming from closed reservations from all over the place. "Will they close this reservation?" "It's quiet this summer, isn't it?" "I wouldn't worry. The Turtle Island Reservation wasn't part of the original treaties. It was different because there wasn't a council of elders or a chief to sign it away. Some French family ceded it to your grandfather during the allotment a decade ago. It was a private ownership long before the government ruined everything. So the same white people who gave the Thunderface family a plot. And the new laws allow folks like the Greyhawks to sell to the white men. Unfortunately, that is the problem. Chippewa and Sioux better learn to get along because soon we'll all be stuck on some lousy piece of land together." She sighed. "Wouldn't that upset your Nanak?" "Does he hate you because you're half Sioux?" "Nanak holds grudges, but he doesn't hate without reason. He once had a good friend, Tiope, who was Sioux, but the Chippewa and Sioux were at war for generations. So he probably just hates a quarter of me." Your grandfather probably hates Thunderface for stealing the southernmost 40-acre plot away from our people. He thinks this land is sacred. Why would the Thunderface family want to live next to people who hate them? How do they end up with the land? Do you remember me telling you about the Bleeding Rock and Old Copper Road? More ghosts, more massacres. No, Lily resigned to hear the old legend again. The Sioux and Chippewa fought over this territory for hundreds of years, and eventually the Chippewa people won northern Minnesota from the Sioux. A century later, Adam Thunderface told some politicians in St. Paul how a Thunderface killed one of Nanak's ancestors in battle here at Lake Manitou. That's how he stole 40 acres from our people. No wonder grandfather's bitter. Not that it matters now. White men get richer, and the natives get poor. Soon, all these lots will be brought up and will end up together in White Earth, or Canada. Mother and daughter went back to work, only to be interrupted a few minutes later by the sound of a horse galloping. "Where's your brother?" Winnie asked with fear in her eyes. "I don't know." Her mother straightened her back and stepped forward just as a large black horse appeared from the north. "Keep your brother away." Lily began walking toward the ravine to look for McGeesy, but stopped when she saw who approached. Wearing a black coat as dark as his horse, Marshal Bushy Bill Morrison rode forward, his beady eyes looking at everything but the two women. Armed with a rifle strapped to his saddle, a pistol and bowie knife on his belt, and his ebony walkie stick, Lily knew he was also looking for some ghosts, but living ones. "Hello, Winnie. How have you been?" "How can I help you, Marshal Morrison?" "There's a rumor that the Black Hat Gang has come south. You wouldn't be harboring criminals such as Pierre Leduc, the Blackfish, or your husband, Big Squeak, in your home, would you?" "I haven't seen my no-good husband for more than a year now, and if I did, I would advise himself to turn himself in." Morrison laughed. "I find it strange that you haven't seen him in so long when your son's parcel has signs of people camping there recently." "The summer birds have returned," Lily reckoned, picturing the children who migrated south with their families, especially the families of her father's outlaws. "The Turtle Island Reservation is 7 miles long. I cannot be responsible for squatters staying on our property illegally, but thank you for running off any unsavory characters. Squeak wouldn't happen to be inside, would he? Feel free to search. If he has come south, I'm sure I'll find him or his illegal alcohol shipments down at the Loose Goose." Morrison chewed on his upper lip as his eyes scanned the area. Satisfied, he spurred his horse. "You girls have a good day and stay out of trouble. I'd hate for you to lose this land by associating with criminals." Not giving them a chance to reply, not that her Winnie would, Marshal Morrison slowly rode down the trail and out of sight. "He's targeting our family. Why does he hate us so?" "Should I still go get McGeesy?" "Jananishans is not here for truancy. He assumed your father would come home for a visit now that you've returned. Fool." Winnie held her palms to the clouds, catching a raindrop. "Looks like we've got these seeds in the ground just in time." She turned toward the house. "Yes, go fetch your brother." How can she stuff away her emotions like that? After retrieving McGeesy, Lily kicked her feet up onto her bed and read while the storm opened up. It continued through lunch and supper, with McGeesy watching on the front porch for most of it. Although the storm lessened near evening, the thick clouds brought dusk earlier than normal, and Lily's tired eyes surrendered to an early sleep. Yet she couldn't sleep. Thoughts of Samuel Thunderface no longer joined her in bed. Although the thoughts, and kept her up like they did the previous summer. The mystery surrounding the death of Teddy Big Martin filled her mind instead. When the lightning flashed, she could see the silhouette of the dreamcatcher in the window. Did I really encounter his ghost? Or was it something else? The owls offered no answers, and the other birds would be silent until morning. There were no wolves or coyotes howling, or even the shrill sound of crickets. We're all alone out here. If I screamed, who would even hear me? Is that the point Bushy Bill was making? Was he trying to frighten Mother to a reservation with more of her people? Lily sighed and closed her eyes to the ripples of lightning in the clouds. The storm was building slowly, and from high above, a few rumbles shook the air. Light gusts that carried cold air swept around the cabin. Instead of violent lightning strikes and blasts of wind, the storms slowly began to boil. Then a scream pierced the slow crescendo. Is someone outside in the storm? She rushed to the window, her nose bumping the webbing of the dreamcatcher. Like a discharge of static electricity, Lily felt a strange surge pass through her body. "Save us," a child screamed, but instead of seeing the ravine out the window, she saw past it to Lake Manitou, where children screamed from an island of ice. Like the chessboard of ice chunks, a pair of black horns ripped through the water as the serpentine Manitude circled around them. At first, the cries for help brought memories of the children she knew at the Sacred Heart Mission. Her hand, once supported by the cabin wall, transformed, and she found herself leaning into the dormitory door. "Save us, Lily. It's trying to kill us," the children cried out. But they were not her students from the school at White Earth either. The scene shifted again. Cold air and snow greeted her instead of rain as she was once back at the cabin, half leaning out the window. Blinking, Lily then found herself at the edge of the lake. "Lily, help!" Hearing their terror, she began to leap from plate to plate like a game of hopscotch. When she grew near, a chasm too far to leap existed between her and the children. Then she understood who they were. Some had short hair, long hair, blonde hair, and even green hair. The clothing was also bizarre and foreign. But all of them, both the boys and the girls, all had her eyes. She stared at a dozen variations of herself. "Who are you?" "You have to save us," they cried out in unison. "It's too far. I don't know what to do." Lily watched in horror as the black horns of the water serpent created a wake that pushed them farther apart. A young boy stepped forward, standing on the edge of the ice. "Don't worry, Lily. It's better that one of us should die so that the others can live." To Lily's horror, the boy threw himself in the frigid water. As he fell, the lake turned into a vortex that pulled both chunks of ice closer. Lily reached down to grab a hold of the boy, but as she did, his flesh transformed into blue clay that fell apart in her hands. The distance between her and the children grew smaller. Had her grasping. Okay. She leapt toward them, gathering them around her. "How do I get you to safety?" They all turned and pointed to the island, which was not a real island, but simply the back of a monstrous turtle. At the center of the island, a fire burned beside a small rock that glowed with equal brilliance. In the warm center of the fire, animals gathered, spaced evenly around it like numbers on a strange clock. A sly marten with long fur, a slender doe with regal eyes, a big loon rested upon its thick chest. There. Also, a tall white crane stood upon its long legs. A large bear with auburn fur shift upon its clawed paws, and an albino raven, and a bald eagle stretched their wings, yet did not take flight. Lastly, a big snapping turtle with spots as radiant as stars upon its shell stretched its long neck to look at her. The animals began shape-shifting into human forms. She recognized some as her new students from St. Marie's Church, Albert Fisher, Bjorn Forsberg, Hermit Crane, but others were strangers. A boy with green hair, two little twin girls dressed in bright yellow, a strawberry blonde, a girl in pigtails, an angry boy with a scar on his jaw, and a calm boy with strange gray eyes. And McGeesy. "Stay where you are," McGeesy shouted from the back of the turtle. "I will kill the horned serpent myself." Instead of rushing away from the water serpent as it neared, McGeesy jumped toward it. As if afraid of his approach, the creature vanished below the surface, but then it reappeared from under the large ice island, tossed the stranded children into the water. While McGeesy chased after the horns, Lily rushed toward the children, whose arms reached out of the water for her. But each time she reached, the children slipped below the surface. "You can't kill the horned serpent," a voice whispered. "You can only set it free." "I don't want to set it free." Lily reached for a drowning child, only to knock the blanket off her bed. She never stood up to look at the window. It had all been a dream. Now she rose for real, looking at the source of the chaos, the dream catcher. "What? Who's there?" McGeesy called out, not from the waters, but from his bed beside where she stood at the bedroom window. "Lily, did you hear that?" McGeesy asked. "There's someone else in the room." Lily's flesh tingled as she once again took a survey of the room. The dresses now hovered like phantoms. The dresser became a dark pit leading to the underworld. At the window, the feathers moved, and on the other side of the dreamcatcher, Lily saw a horned figure staring back at her. Chapter 6. A Stopping Place. Fawn Chevreul outlasted the storm, and now knew she had to act. She tossed the wet blanket off her cold body and threw the useless tarp aside, revealing the cold, dark dawn. Her younger sister pulled the wet pillow over her face, now using it as a shield from the reality they'd woken to. The campfire had been turned to ash, and the wood black and cold. On the other side of the dead fire, the Labiche tent fared better, with its ropes still holding it taut. They probably slept through the whole ordeal. But the third tent, the Leduc tent, had completely collapsed, leaving 4 lumps on the ground. Between the lumps, pools of water collected, slowly seeping through to the bodies underneath. Fawn took hold of the loose ropes and peeled the tarp back slowly so the water ran to the sides. "Mama?" "No, sweetie, it's just Fawn." The little Leduc boys looked as if they hadn't slept a week. "Where's my mama?" "Where are any of the adults?" "Your mama had to run up to Leech Lake, remember?" She tried to smile, knowing Bushy Bill had scattered the adults to unknown destinations. "Now I know it's early, but I'm going to get some hot food for us all, okay?" At this, she added, "Help me hang up the blankets so they'll be dry by tonight." "I'm hungry," one of the Labiche children said from the opening of their tent. "We'll get food soon. Did you stay dry?" "My feet got wet." "That figures." Fawn clapped her hands, and soon all 7 children were either sitting, standing, or helping to hang the wet blankets. "I hate this place," Christine Leduc said bitterly. At 10, she was second in command, but quite worthless. The summer birds now looked like drowned rats. Fighting a sigh, Fawn said, "I know our folks told us to stay put, but we're all cold and hungry, so I'm going to take you on a little hike, and in an hour, we'll be warm and dry with full bellies, okay? I'm in charge, and there's no sense sitting in wet clothes around a cold fire." Looking to the sky, she saw the clouds breaking to reveal a blue sky inside. They needed to get moving. The wooded trail was easy travel, and from Nimrod Crossing could be jogged in under an hour. But with a flock of agitated children, it took every bit of patience to finish the trek. Her faith was rewarded with the smell of bacon. When the children saw the cabin, they ran the final 100 yards, not even waiting to knock on the front door. Lily Weber stood at the rear of the cabin with her brother McGeesy, who ran around the cabin to see all of his kin. Despite the long night, Fawn smiled at her eldest cousin. "Anin, hamushke," Lily answered in Sioux with a wry smile. "We heard there were squatters camping upstream. It's good to see that my little summer birds have returned." Even in her nightgown, Lily looked like an angel, and Fawn envied her height, her beautiful straight hair, her slender form, and her welcoming eyes. Lily's mixed blood made her almost regal, but Fawn's mixed blood made her ugly in both worlds. Compared to Lily, Fawn almost looked white. She had dark freckles on her cheeks, and her mother cut her curly, sandy hair short, tucked into pigtails. "I didn't know you were home." "Well, White Earth was awful, so I'm going to help teach farm kids at St. Marie's for a year till I can find a better job or a husband. And don't ask me about Samuel Thunderface or John Labiche." "Fine, I won't," Fawn said. Turning, she frowned, trying to make sense of the strange clues. A spear, broken glass, an 8-inch iron cross, and a broken dream catcher all rested on the ground beneath the rear bedroom window. What happened here? "How do I even begin?" Lily muttered, picking up the metal cross. "We had some spooky stuff happen during the storm." She pointed to a piece of wood over one of the window panes. "Things got carried away, and I broke the window by accident, so we had to fix the window before we got breakfast." Lily paused to fling the broken frame of a dream catcher toward the ravine. "You look like a drowned muskrat. Let's get you some food." By mid-morning, Fawn sat on a stone outcropping, dangling legs with Lily as they watched McGeesy fishing with his spear in the eddies of the river. Above their heads, the real summer birds flitted in the branches while the herons and cranes fished in the river. All of it was observed by the silent ravens in the oak trees. "Was my father with everybody else?" Lily asked. "No, but I think he was planning on meeting his whole gang before Bushy Bill found out. Blackfish, Pierre Leduc, and my father were the first to arrive. My mom took off for Leech Lake, and the rest of the women went to warn their husbands. They'll probably all run back to Canada now. I only saw him once last summer. I wish I only saw my father once a year. Your father is really funny. My dad is mean." "Funny? I guess I've only seen mean also." Fawn found herself distracted by McGeesy, who stalked his prey in the river. McGeesy raised his spear behind his ear and froze. A moment later, it plunged into the water and vanished. Its butt reappeared for a moment, prompting McGeesy to jump in after. What an idiot! He's not an idiot. McGeesy is amazing. Even though McGeesy was younger than Fawn, he didn't act like a foolish boy. He seemed years older than the others. 2 generations before Old Nank, the Weber family and the Chevril family trees joined, making the reservation their summer home. But for Fawn, McGeesy was potential husband material. One day. A moment later, he emerged from the water holding a fish almost as long as his spear. Fawn jumped to her feet and ran down to see his 3-foot trophy brought to shore. "What is it?" Fawn asked as the bleeding creature was thrown onto the rocks. "It's a gar," he grinned when he locked eyes with Fawn. We can eat it for lunch. Make sure it doesn't flop into the water, too. A moment later, he hopped back out to his perch, looking for another fish. So what happened with the dream catcher? Fawn pressed, since she was told not to ask about boys from White Earth. McGeesy and I thought we heard some voices coming from it, so I grabbed McGeesy's spear from the corner and stabbed it, which is how I broke the glass. Then I threw it outside and put my cross on it until daylight came to drive any spirit away. The spirits talk to you? Fawn declared without judgment. My dad said that's why Squeak will never be caught. He said the water, wind, and earth whispers to your father. He said your side of the family is special. Fawn's gaze returned to McGeesy when Lily scoffed. Well, my father's an illegal bootlegger that sells alcohol to his own people, so don't put him on too high of a pedestal. And don't believe the stories all the old men tell around the campfires. Once you hear that stuff, you begin imagining things. From the river, McGeesy let out a startled cry, and without even looking, he tossed his spear toward the shore. Be careful, Lily shouted at him, but the toss had only freed him so that he could dive into the water. McGeesy, Lily called, but McGeesy did not emerge. 10 yards downstream, McGeesy popped up long enough for Lily to shout out his name again. Then he was wrestling with something. A creature merged with him. Does he have it, or does it have him? Fawn picked up the spear, ready to help, and stood beside Lily at the water's edge. Finally, McGeesy came out of the river dragging a monstrous snapping turtle by the tail. He's so brave. What are you going to do with that thing? Lily asked. Look how big it is, he beamed as the creature's long, thick neck reached back across its shell in an attempt to bite McGeesy's fingers. I could make a shield with the shell. Why would you need a shield? For when I fight the horned serpent, he said, chuckling as the massive turtle dragged its claws into the riverbank. Lily's face paled, sharing no enthusiasm for the omen. She's changed since White Earth. Fawn offered the spear, but McGeesy reached for a rock to crush the monster's head. One day he'll be a leader of our people. If I married him, my children would be able to fit in. Lily didn't smile as her brother finally accepted the spear to finish off the wounded monster. A Jessicid wouldn't hurt a turtle. This is awful. This is the magic I've been praying for, McGeesy countered. You're hopeless. Lily picked up the gar and walked back up the hill. Do you want help? Fawn asked McGeesy. Nope. I can carry it, I think. Lily stopped a few yards away and then crouched down. What's that? Fawn saw something glistening and white in the mud beside where Lily stopped. McGeesy turned to where the mud met the grass. Turtle eggs? Was that a mother turtle? Fawn asked. Does a boy turtle have a penis? Grow up. It's not like she was going to milk her babies. They aren't eggs. Lily pried up one with her finger and handed one to Fawn. Even caked in mud, it was gorgeous. I think it's some sort of oyster. It almost looks like a pearl. Or a snail, McGeesy offered. The rain must have uncovered them. Lily grabbed a nearby stick and unearthed handfuls of shells. Maybe some old midday dropped them here, McGeesy said. Bring them with. I want to show Grandfather. Here, put them in the fold of my dress, Lily offered, and Fawn began scooping them up. McGeesy dragged the snapping turtle up the hill as they uncovered 24 shells. On top of the ravine, the younger children played in front of the cabin. Seeing McGeesy, the Leduc children hollered and hooted so loudly that even the ravens took flight. McGeesy, looking pleased, dropped the monster on the ground so the children could gawk at it. Fawn picked up the gar under the gills and followed Lily, who carried the shells. Fawn rushed past all of them with the gar. What a beauty! Winnie marveled at the fish as she stepped outside. Put the gar in the sink. I'll make him for lunch. McGeesy's got a snapping turtle the size of a wagon wheel, Fawn said, turning. He thinks he's going to make it into a shield for when he fights the horned serpent. The young Tehi, Winnie said to Lily, using the Sioux name. Now that you are home for the summer, do your best to keep him away from the river. It's dangerous. I'll try, Lily said with a defeated look. Lily lifted the folds of her dress. Look what else we found. She showed Winnie the pile of shells. What are they? Lily asked Winnie. The Chippewa elders call them Migi shells, but they are cowrie shells. Where did you find these? Down by the river, McGeesy said, coming towards them. Right where I found the turtle. Curious. I'm going to wash these up, Winnie said, reaching for the shells. Afterwards, I want you to show your grandfather what you found. I think it might be important. Chapter 7. Breadcrumbs. McGeesy Asabakashi remembered to say a prayer before he gutted the massive snapping turtle, thanking it for its flesh. And then his knife carved the flesh from inside the shell. The children watched as his forearms became coated in blood and gore. He handed the good chunks of flesh to Christine Leduc, who held his mother's metal serving plate. 2 omens in one day, he thought, as his arm reached into the cavity of the turtle shell. This is what Grandfather Nanak was waiting for. I want the guts for the garden, his mother said, as she directed the other children on where to bury them. Fawn, go fetch a pail of water for cleaning. 2 was still inside, allowing him to clean the turtle without guilt. With the sacred shell of a turtle as a shield, I'll be a match for the horned serpent. Neither ghosts nor the Takpai will dare show themselves. He scraped the shell clean, formulating a plan on how to cut the shell in half and then reinforce the interior so that the rough top shell would stay together in a battle. It'll be awesome. Done, he said to Christine, putting down the last. She nodded and carried the platter of flesh into the house. Fawn Chevril returned with a bucket and a smile as McGeesy gave the shell a pat. It bothered him that she was almost a foot taller than him now, and her freckled face was always smiling. Thanks. He quickly rubbed his arms until his flesh was visible again, and then flicked his arms to shed the water, getting Fawn wet in the process. That stole her smile. Proud of that accomplishment, he strutted into the house, a victorious warrior, only to see 2 at the table with his other prize, the Migi shells. She's going to claim them as her prize. They're my omen. He scooped up a handful from the table. Now washed, the white shells held all sorts of intricate glory, from the iridescent shimmer on the top of the shell to the tiny ridges in the creased bottom. They were indeed a beauty to behold. None of them had bored holes, Tu explained. So, he let his handful of shells cascade back into the pile. In order to put them in a necklace, shawl, or onto clothing, you have to bore a little hole into them with a strong needle or pointed knife. These are untouched. Maybe it was a colony that got buried by a mudslide. These are tropical snails, dummy. They didn't just crawl to Minnesota. Someone had to bring them here. A necklace would be cool. Mother, can you make them into a necklace? Show them to your grandfather first. Tu had them all drying on a towel, so McGeesy reached down, grabbed the corners, and gathered them up like a bag. Okay. And out the door he went. Hey! Tu called out quickly caught him, but not before barking at the other children. You stay here. Why does she hate Grandfather Nanak so much? It started when she insisted on being called Lily instead of Tuwapa. It grew worse after she was baptized, and after going to school, she acted like he was a diseased skunk. What happened to my sister? Even though Tuwapa's legs were twice as long, he kept a hurried pace all the way. which kept her from nagging him about anything and everything. Grandfather also had a small garden, and he was outside in it, leaning on his tall staff as they approached. "So, tell me about the dream catcher," Grandfather greeted. "Did you see anything?" "I heard something," McGeesy said, "but two wrecked it already." "Wrecked it?" "She tore the webbing with my spear and then threw out the window during the storm. I didn't get a chance to ask it any questions." Grandfather shot Tuapa a dirty look, and for a moment, McGeesy thought he might strike her with his staff. "Today we found something along the bank of the river, Migi shells." Grandfather studied each one of the white shells in the pile placed in front of him, his mouth forming a deeply ridged pout. Despite his age, his scarred fingers were deft and steady as he handled one. "Do you see the shape of each shell?" McGeesy nodded. "It is shaped like the back of a turtle to remind us what we are looking for. These shells are meant to guide us along the path. They were left for us to find them." "By a shape-shifting rabbit?" Tuapa asked. McGeesy clenched his teeth at the insult. Manabozho was sent by the Great Spirit to teach the Ojibwe, especially about the spiritual path of the Medewiwin. Although the shape-shifting god occasionally took the form of a trickster rabbit in tales, his teachings were at the heart of Grandfather's religious beliefs. Grandfather's pout turned into a snarl, and he threw one of the shells at her, bouncing it off her chest. "Heretics are not welcome in my house. Once I had a granddaughter blessed with the name Tuapa Asabakashi, and now I only see a Christian named Lily Weber standing before me. Who are you?" Lily held her head high. "I'm Lily Weber. Wait outside, Lily the Christian, until you can respect our sacred traditions." Grandfather took McGeesy by the shoulder and guided him to the cabin, leaving two behind. "It's an omen, isn't it? Does this mean I can begin more training?" Not answering him, Nanak put the bag of shells upon the table and went for his coffee pot, pouring himself a serving into a tin cup. He sat at the chair, staring at the shells. "Tell me how you found these." McGeesy started the story with the gar, then detailed his fight with the snapping turtle, and then described how the shells were encased in dirt, barely exposed. "Could it be your grandfather's shells, or your great-grandfather?" "Chief Weeyipisu? It is possible. But any Migi shells they wore would have had puncture marks. These shells are unmolested. It means..." McGeesy watched with opened mouth as Grandfather suddenly began to cry, the tears running down angular lines in his deep wrinkles. "What's wrong?" Grandfather looked at his scarred hands, his thumb crossing over the missing fingernails. "My grandfather Shagobay died protecting the secrets of our family, and he once walked the same riverbed as you. But Nanabozho did not intend for him to find the shells. You were meant to find them." 2 hours later, hungry for his cooked gar, McGeesy left the house with a spinning head. His feet no longer walked upon the earth, but seemed to float in the past and future. Two waited on a large boulder. As children, they shared all their adventures together. Even though she was changing, he wanted to share this one with her too. "She'll always be Tuapa to me." McGeesy handed her a shell, which she studied quietly before asking, "Any answers?" "He thinks it is the fulfillment of some ancient prophecy." "What is it this time, O great Thunderbird?" McGeesy smiled at her sarcasm. "He says it is part of the Seven Fires prophecy." "What's that?" "Apparently a prediction from long, long time ago. The shells are some sort of clue." "Another long-winded story, huh?" McGeesy nodded. "Our people once lived along the Atlantic when we were visited by prophets. Let me guess, and a big talking rabbit?" "Do you want to hear the story or not?" McGeesy grumbled. At her silence, he began again. The prophets warned that doom and destruction would come upon the people if they did not leave their homeland in search of a new home. Each prophecy was called a fire, and it represented not only a time period for a people, but also a stopping place. A stopping place? Yeah, you remember the story about the girl with the red blanket who left pieces of her bread behind? Hansel and Gretel left breadcrumbs, not Little Red Riding Hood. She shrugged. What about it? Why does she think she always knows everything? Well, it was kind of like that, but in reverse. Our ancestors had no idea where the prophets wanted them to go, but they were given clues. The hunters went out looking for Migi shells, and when they found some, they would move the whole village to the new location. Wait a second, are you telling me Grandfather believes gnomes or Tokpai or Memagwisi left the shells for us to find? McGeesy raised his eyebrows and gave a little shrug. You said it yourself. You've never seen a clam or snail anywhere around here with a shell like that, have you? Tu shook her head. He said there were 6 distinct stopping places between here and the Atlantic. At each stopping place, someone would find a pile of these shells near a turtle-shaped island. He said in the time of his great-grandfather's life, the Chippewa lived at Lake Superior. Madeline Island, she remarked. After the Battle of Cathio, when the Chippewa defeated the Sioux, our people moved into the lands where food grows on water, wild rice. But none of the Medewiwan priests could agree upon where the actual 7th stopping place was. Some thought it was Mille Lacs, others thought it was Fond du Lac, and others thought it was farther west at Turtle Mountain in North Dakota. Tu sighed. And Grandfather thinks they're all wrong? McGeesy nodded. His great-grandfather Weeyipisu came here because he thought Lake Winagiata of the Sioux was the 7th stopping place. Do you realize how crazy that sounds? Magic fairies leaving behind a trail of white shells? So what? What were our people obsessed to find at the end of the rainbow? Who said anything about a rainbow? I don't know. Apparently, I have to be trained first before he can tell me more. Trained to do what? I don't know. He thinks finding the Migi shells was a good omen and that I have a powerful destiny ahead of me. Yeah, but you didn't find the shells, Tu reminded. You were busy killing the snapping turtle. I was the one who found the shells. Chapter 8. Sugar-Coated. That Sunday, Lily did not take no for an answer. She stood beside McGeesy's bed until he threw off the covers with a huff. Fine, but there better be desserts. There will be. Now put these on. Lily handed him a new pair of trousers she'd sewn and a pair of repurposed shoes. I hate wearing shoes. Why do I have to wear them? Because you're coming to church with me in Split Rock. Split Rock? To the big church? He muttered as he worked the buttons of the white shirt. I'll go with you, but only to protect you. Don't expect me to go inside. A small victory. Winnie's home church was several miles west, which meant she had already departed. She often became more devout whenever her father appeared, so the rumors of his return fueled a renewed dedication. Especially on a beautiful summer morning. Unfortunately, the little country church had no Sunday school classes, which forced Lily to break with her mother's tradition. Lily and McGeesy did not talk much as they walked 4 miles to the town of Split Rock. She looked up at the rising sun and the golden sky. Getting him out of the shadow of Nanook is good. Bringing him to civilization and church is a good thing. McGeesy, however, took his protective duties serious, studying any danger, real or imagined, along the road. 2 steeples of Split Rock could be seen from almost 2 miles away. Lily smiled at the sight. You really should come inside with me. From the balcony, you can see all the stained glass paintings, and the pipe organ is so loud you can feel it on your skin. I'll find a tree to sit under. trees are holier than your stack of bricks. When they arrived in the logging town, Split Rock was still sleeping, allowing the Weber children to shuffle up the streets to safety of the two churches, one Lutheran and one Catholic. McGeesy found his tree, and Lily found her newest church home. For most farming families, chores needed to be done before hitching up the wagon to come to town. For that reason, church began late in the morning. A trip to town on Sunday meant the families could socialize for hours, and for the most ardent farmers, it was also a chance to get well educated. When the bells pealed, the organ played and the congregation sang. McGeesy waited outside as Lily prepared the classroom. With Catholic Mass taking place inside St. Marie's, Lily peeked out the classroom window from time to time. She marveled at how many wagons parked between the two churches, bringing hundreds of residents into a single city block. She located her brother under the shade of a pine tree. McGeesy whittled a branch to the nub and then picked up another. Next time, I'll get him to come inside. This is a first step. As the closing song began, Sister Inez burst into the classroom in a flutter of black fabric. Even though her dark habit left only her face exposed, she had an attractive face with bright eyes and thin lips. Sister Inez and other nuns often visited the reservation, which is how they first met several summers ago. She took her place at the front of the classroom before the first student quietly arrived. Sister Inez ran the show, leaving Lily to secretly and meekly assist her as she taught the most illiterate children of Hiawatha County. Despite compulsory attendance at the local public school, most of the farm families ignored the law, leaving Sunday school as the sole source of education during the week. Miss Lily, run to the closet, fetch some more chalk, please, Sister Inez directed once the children had settled into their lesson. Miss Lily. The words put a smile on her face. Even though fetching chalk for Sunday school classes was a step backward for Lily, she hoped it would pave the way for her to become a teacher at one of the local public schools. With a semester of teaching at White Earth and a summer of teaching white students at a church, I'll probably have a chance at getting a real teaching job somewhere besides the reservation. Granted, it'll probably be some small country school, but a year teaching out in the country will open doors for me to be able to teach at. She crashed face first into the chest of a stranger. The suddenness of it caused her to scoot backward in the hallway and drop the box of chalk. Oof, my apologies, the man said. Not answering, Lily quickly looked to her toes, then to the box of chalk, and then to the feet of the stranger. She almost ran back to the classroom, but the man knelt down to pick up the box, revealing him to be a priest, and definitely not Father Aber. This priest was tall, handsome, and lean, as if a soldier had simply donned the robes of a priest. His face was decades younger than Father Aber, and behind his circular glasses, his eyes studied her intently. You must be the young woman helping Sister Inez. Young woman. Lily melted. Not an Indian, not a girl. He called me a young woman. She felt her ears heat. As soon as he picked up, then extended the box of chocolate to her, she snatched it away and hustled by without saying a word. Her heart pounded so hard that she had to pause outside the classroom just to compose herself. She returned to the classroom to find Sister Inez with a ruler in hand beside the desk of Frankie Auerbach. Here's the chalk, she said. She softly announced before walking over to the window. She glanced out to see McGeesy still whittling away. Just as she was turning from the window, she saw the tall priest step outside to study the crowd. He locked his hands behind his back as if observing a painting at a museum. When he looked up to the window, Lily jumped away to join Sister Inez in monitoring the students. Albert Fisher eyed her cautiously, and Bjorn Forsberg called out specifically for Sister Inez's help. Emily McPherson didn't seem to care about the distinct difference in Lily's skin tone. She asked enough questions to keep Lily occupied. When the 2-hour session ended, and the children ran out to the picnic tables for lunch with their families, Sister Inez transformed from a statue into a mentor. "You did very well today. You stayed out of the way like I asked, but you provided gentle assistance like I asked too. Having an extra set of eyes on the boys helps me immensely. What do you think?" "It was different than White Earth." "I can imagine. It's hard for me to believe they'd leave someone your age alone with a room full of children." Lily didn't know how to answer, so she began to help clean up. Sister Inez joined her, and in a few short minutes they were done. Then Lily approached Sister Inez. There was a priest downstairs by the supply cupboards." "Ah, you met Father Garrett. He startled me." "He keeps his belongings downstairs. You think he's here stealing supplies from us?" Sister Inez joked. "No, I just... What's he doing here?" "Truth be told, he is a bit of a mystery to me. He's a Jesuit and a guest of the bishop." "Is he going to replace Father Aber?" "I certainly hope not. Jesuits are different from regular priests. A long time ago, Jesuits were more like warrior priests, serving as missionaries and spies. What he is doing here in Hiawatha County baffles me. He mostly sits up in the balcony reading books during the week. From what Father Aber said, Father Garrett has powerful friends both in St. Paul and in Washington." "A warrior? Why is he here in Hiawatha County?" "Powerful friends? A friend of mine at the diocese offices in St. Cloud said he had been sent to the Philippines and Cuba. His most recent mail is being forwarded from a Georgetown address near the capital." Sister Inez stepped closer to whisper, "I don't know if I completely trust the man, so stay out of his way, understood? Understand?" Lily nodded. The handsome Jesuit priest crept into Lily's dreams, but not in the way her broken heart might have hoped. She found herself lost in a gnarled black forest, similar to the woods along Old Copper Road south of Split Rock. The twisted fingers of oak trees reached down, snagging wisps of her hair as she ran. Fighting the trees, she spun around, and soon the road back into Split Rock disappeared. "Do not despair," Father Garrett soothed, stepping from behind a tree. "I know the path of the 7 fires. I can help you find your way." He bent down, picked up a shell, and showed it to her. "It's just a stupid shell. It doesn't mean anything," Lily replied. "It doesn't..." Her protest stopped as a neat little white line of shells appeared, marking a path. They followed it, Father Garrett rambling incessantly about each of the stopping places of the 7 fires, unaware of the shadows following them, until Lily couldn't take it anymore. "Quiet! Don't you see where we are? We're walking the shores of Lake Manitou, the place of souls." But it was too late. The wailing women from her mother's tale had found them. The black shadows of the trees took the shape of a dozen Sioux women, each slightly resembling her mother. They were not her mother. They were ghouls, holding their own heads like bloody lanterns. "You should not have come here," one of the severed heads said. "Now we have no other choice." "Run!" Lily screamed to Father Garrett, whose eyes grew wide with terror before he turned. But he could not outrun the specters following him. No one in the mother's tales ever could. Giving chase, the crazed ghouls shouted, "Give us back the children!" Running out of breath, Lily got further and further behind them. At a clearing in the forest, one of the women threw her head, knocking Father Garrett off balance and onto the floor of the forest. He tried rising to his feet, but the others hurled their heads at him until he fell battered to the ground. Lily helplessly watched from a safe distance. He tried rising again, but this time a black serpent rose from the edge of the cliff, snatching Garrett into its toothy jaws, dragging him to Lake Manitou. "Don't worry," Father Guerin shouted to her. "I know how to save the children." But then the horned serpent swallowed him down its toothy gullet. Gasping for breath, Lily jolted awake. She looked over to see McGeesy still sleeping. Her heart pounded and her back was moist from sweat. "I thought I was past these damn dreams." She debated on waking him for a few minutes. No, it only make things worse for him, for me. She turned to her side to face the wall and feign sleep. And instead of pleasant dreams about the young priest, she kept thinking of the children, and how all their faces looked like her. Chapter 9. Puppets on a String. With monsters and ghouls lingering in the shadows, the patterns of summer soon filled Lily's days with menial tasks, duties, lots of reading, and too much time to ponder the meaning of things, especially the secrets of her home. Finding the shells had turned into a catastrophe, as McGeesy spent entire days with Grandfather Nanak. Worse, her little brother was tight-lipped about what was discussed, and no amount of Sunday sugar could coax it out of him. Desperate to keep her brother under her wing, Lily indulged a shared interest, the ghost of Teddy Bigmartin. She thought it went well, until McGeesy carried another dream catcher home like a trophy. Lily intercepted him before their mother could see it. "It's probably a good thing you have two names," McGeesy said after pulling the dream catcher away from her outstretched hands. "I don't understand how you can be Christian Lily one day and Tuapa the next." "What's wrong with having an open mind?" "Being cursed. If Teddy Bigmartin is now a ghost, it's because the Great Spirit is punishing him for becoming a Christian. Let that be a lesson to you." He handed her the dream catcher. "And if it's not Teddy Bigmartin?" McGeesy shrugged. "So what's your plan?" Lily kept the second dream catcher close, then turned and began walking toward the river. "First, we'll hang it on the other side of the river. Grandfather once said something about water acting like a barrier for spirits." She paused. "Oh, that reminds me. I've been reading Psalms lately, a book of songs in the Bible, and there is a place of the dead called Sheol, which seems to be either in the water or is the water." "Huh?" McGeesy grunted. "Our Chippewa ancestors believe 4 days after death the spirit ascends into the River of Souls." "The River of Souls is in the stars." "But still a river, just like Sheol." He shrugged. "Both times we saw a ghost, it was right after a storm, right? And we know how our ancestors felt the lake had a connection to spirit, right? And the horned serpent." Images of the horned serpent devouring both her brother and Father Guerin filled her mind. "Well, forget about that for a minute. In both religions, spirits are supposed to go to the next place. But what if spirits get stuck? When it rains, they can wander away a bit, but still end up right back at the water. What if something keeps them from crossing over?" McGeesy smiled. "Now you're starting to sound like two again." Lily recoiled at the comment. "Am I?" "Grandfather said the dream catcher is designed to trap evil spirits in a net, so they don't harm children. But what if the spirit we saw was trying to talk to us? It warned us about trying to kill the horned serpent. I know you heard it too. Which is why you shouldn't have wrecked the loom and thrown it out the window." "Good morning. Got an email." "Well, it's from a national magazine who wants to do a story on me.
Oh, wow.
Voyager, Minnesota.
Nice.
They're based out of California."
Huh. Very cool.
"Yep. I don't know how I'm going to fit in with these people." It's like, what? So, yeah. I just replied with an email that said, "Hell yeah." No, I didn't say that, but okay.
Wow.
Bye-bye. I'm sorry. I heard a strange voice in my bedroom. Of course I wasn't going to react rationally. Taking a deep breath, Lily continued, "What if this time we can bring it out in the woods, hang it from a tree, and try again? We can wake up in the morning before the sun and see if we've caught something." A wrinkle appeared on her brother's brow. "Like fishing. Okay, I understand." Lily and McGeesy crossed the river, which was already lower than 2 days ago, and walked past the ruins of the Greyhawk homestead, deeper into the old forest. Lily studied the twisted willow and sinew that came into view, wondering how the old magic worked the first time. Is this far enough? Going in any farther would be foolish. "I suppose," McGeesy said, turning around. "Let's hang it over there in the shadows so the light doesn't burn away the evil spirits." Lily felt goosebumps on her arms as she followed her brother into the cool shadows. As soon as she hung it, she felt relief. "Now promise we'll only check it together, to watch out for each other, so nothing bad happens to us." "Agreed." Lily stepped back. That should do the trick, right?" "I guess. Grandfather only showed me how to make them. He didn't talk about how to catch things with them." Leaving the forest, Lily found comfort in the sun. "It's hot. We should go down to the sandbars and swim." "Seriously? You want to swim in Spirit Lake right after we had a spirit in our bedroom? No way. Not until we find out if it's evil. I just want to get home." "What's the difference between wading through the water and swimming? It's all the same water." "Look, I want answers too, but I just don't want to press our luck." A hoarse whinny filled the air. "Not good, not good, not good. Did you hear that? It came from the lake. Let's get out of here." Lily avoided a full run, but she knew they were trespassing on Triton land now, and horses meant white men. She grabbed McGeesy by the arm and pulled him back towards the river. Once they reached the Greyhawk property, she sighed with relief until she saw the top of hats floating on the horizon of the ravine. Grabbing McGeesy again, she jerked him down to hide behind the foundation of the old stable and put a finger to his lips. "Adam Thunderface throws rocks. These men could do far worse." The laughter of men who walked upon the earth with the ease of gods filled the valley. "Wouldn't it be easier to just get some dynamite and turn these boulders to rubble?" the man shouted. Lily and McGeesy shuffled to the northwestern corner. As long as they were on the wrong side of the river, they were in danger. Since the voices were quite a ways away, she peeked. Bushy Bill Morrison stood on a boulder in the middle of the river. Another 3 men stood with horses down in the ravine. 2 more, still astride horses, looked down from the top of the ravine. "You're missing the point," Morrison said. "The dam isn't just to streamline the logging." "Then why did Triton invest in these pineries up north by Leech Lake?" the man asked. "Appearances, Walter. Everything we do has to look legitimate," a well-dressed man on a horse pup answered. "I feel like a puppet," the man holding the 2 horses grumbled. "You are a puppet, Walter, isn't he, Dobie? Welcome to the family, Walter." "Morrison just should think twice about buying the cow when he's getting the milk for free. It's the price you paid marrying into the Sinclair family. The longer you're a puppet, the less you mind the strings." Lily didn't know Dobie, but she knew Walter Stewart from reading the newspapers. "Stay single, Morrison. Dobie's right about marriage. Now, Ira, explain to me again why I would want to invest half my fortune into this dam." The sweet smell of tobacco smoke drifted across the ravine. Sinclair? Philip, Marquette, Oz Haggard, and Walter Stewart were 3 businessmen from St. John who all married daughters of Scott Sinclair, who had helped build and finance the town of St. John on the western end of Lake Manitou. Lily knew the names from the newspaper articles, but could not match the faces. Walter Stewart was obviously the one hauling the horses, which meant the other 2 by the river were likely Marquette and Haggard. The 2 on the hill were strangers. Why were they gathered there? The first phase is to build the Nicollet Dam, which has proven to be a little bit more difficult than we first thought. Currently, Triton owns the entire western shore of the Blue Knife River, but you can't have a dam without actually spanning the river. That's why Mr. Douglas and Mr. Dobie came out here to acquire the southernmost acres. Hold on a second. I thought the new laws were going to force all the Indians onto one reservation way up north. The White Earth Reservation? Morrison answered. Lily saw him spit a glob of tobacco and winced. You're right about the intent of the law, Oz, but after the tribal property was distributed to the individual, it still needs to be sold by the individual. None of the Indians on this reservation seem willing to sell. Not even with a little coercion? Morrison chuckled cruelly. No, Oz. We didn't have to stoop so low as to lynch anybody. I thought you were supposed to arrest one of the landowners for bootlegging. Big Squeak is easily spooked, Morrison admitted. Can't take away his land until there are formal charges and a trial. Adam Thunderface had been willing to let us build a road through his property and even a bridge. But we needed this second lot for a dam. McGeesey looked at Lily, who turned with wide eyes to whisper, The other side of the river is Natick's lot. Lily looked up to confirm that they were indeed near Nicollet Rapids. No, now be quiet until they leave. Mr. Douglas, explain to me Delhut's plan again. Ira Douglas, the thin businessman. As you know, Triton is not just about the 3 of you. 3 families represent Triton Corporation: the Toronts from France, the Delhuts from Detroit, and the Sinclairs from Nova Scotia. Even though the 3 of you married Sinclairs, it's still one vote. And I represent Mr. Delhut in matters with the support of the Toronts. One of the local brothers-in-law answered, You're really a goddamn lawyer, Douglas, and you're not getting our help until we understand what Delhut wants once the dam is built. The lawyer continued, The Blue Knife River will serve as a glorified log chute to get lumber from Leech Lake Pineries through the processing mill at Split Rock. All that is sleight of hand. In order for Oz to transition from a brickyard to a full-fledged quartz quarry, we need to regulate the water flow coming into Lake Manitou. Building a dam will allow logs to be wrangled right over these rapids. Morrison responded, So this dam will let you keep spring flooding from overwhelming the banks of Lake Manitou into Haggard's quarry. Why did you call it the Nicollet Dam? Mr. Delhut came up with that name. Tad arrogant, don't you think? Are you trying to provoke our enemies? Morrison asked when the others remained silent. This dam would pretty much put an end to the reservation, wouldn't it? One of the brother-in-laws surmised. McGeesey's forehead looked like it would split in half, and his mouth tightened with anger. She placed a hand in the middle of his back to soothe him, and also to keep him from doing something stupid. And, no, I mean, they'll lose some land. The water will be at the top of the ravine by this time next year. The other stranger, Dobie, spoke to Morrison. Before any of this can happen, we need the eastern bank without a fuss. There's a Jesuit already sniffing around on behalf of the Chippewa. So do this lawfully, Morrison, or it'll blow up on our face. Be discreet. Father Guerin. She felt dread, but McGeesey's eyes flashed with anger. She'd seen too many displaced families arrive at White Earth the previous year. Will we be next? When she peeked again, the 5 men had dispersed. I need to tell Grandfather Natick. This will ruin everything, McGeesey said, running right to the spot where the men had just stood. Lily emerged from hiding slowly. Suddenly, thoughts of ghosts, horned serpents, and talk pie felt silly. These men are worse than monsters. or they're going to steal our whole world away from us. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is.
Chapter 10, Men of the Dawn. The Blue Knife River, June 10th, 1897. Halvar Dobie patiently endured the tour of the newly acquired property. Bushy Bill Morrison, the local henchman, dismounted his big black horse and climbed upon a boulder in the river to explain the plans. Walter Stewart, a local merchant, held Morrison's horse along with his own along the shore. "Wouldn't it be easier to get some dynamite and turn these boulders to rubble?" Ozzie Haggard shouted down from the high bank. Like Stewart, Haggard was another local, but of the three men of the dawn, his bloodline was the oldest. The three local businessmen hosted Dobie and Ira Douglas, with Bushy Bill Morrison serving as the tour guide. "You're missing the point," Philip Marquette answered. He was the third local businessman who'd married into the family business. Although his bloodline was the youngest, he grasped the bigger picture of what was happening in Hiawatha County. Marquette looked to Dobie before finishing his point. The dam isn't just to streamline the logging. "Then, why did Triton invest in these pineries up north by Leech Lake?" Walter Stewart asked. "Appearances, Walter. Everything we do has to look legitimate," Ira Douglas explained. Douglas had traveled with Dobie by train from Albany, New York. All six of them served the Order of Eos in their own way. Bushy Bill Morrison did the dirty work, hoping to work his way up the ladder. Stewart, Marquette, and Haggard operated legitimate shell companies for the larger corporation, Triton. And Ira Douglas helped Eos maintain its power through its modern business mechanisms. Halvar Dobie served the Order of Eos at its highest level, even though he, too, was only a servant. "I feel like a puppet," Stewart muttered, holding the two horses. "You are a puppet, Walter," Bushy Bill chuckled. "Isn't he, Dobie?" Dobie nodded. "Welcome to the family, Walter. Although Morrison should think twice about buying the cow when he's getting the milk for free," Dobie said in reference to Morrison's affair with Adriana Sinclair. Like the local businessman, Morrison knew the Sinclair family was the true power behind the Order of Eos. The two sons of Magnus Sinclair did the bidding of Eos in Hergelmere, with William Sinclair residing in Nova Scotia and Scott Sinclair moving his family to Minnesota. Yet the two heirs produced 5 daughters, but only one son between them. Had the young princeling Jack Sinclair not tragically died in the Hinckley Fire of 1894, the two kissing cousins, Adriana and Jack, would have united the two branches of the Sinclair family in marriage. Instead of returning home to Nova Scotia, though, Adriana Sinclair began an affair with Bushy Bill Morrison. 3 Minnesota peasants married into the Sinclair family, and the heir apparent became Pierre Delhut, who'd married Scott Sinclair's oldest daughter. But Halvar Dobie served the Grand Master of Eos, regardless of who was elected, and gave Morrison daggers in his smile for sleeping with the boss's daughter. "It's the price you paid marrying into the Sinclair family," Ira Douglas lightened the mood. "The longer you're a puppet, the less you mind the strings." "Stay single, Morrison," Marquette offered his advice. "Dobie's right about marriage." The man laughed. Stewart focused on the matter at hand. "Now, Philip, explain to me again why I would want to invest half my fortune in this dam." Dobie didn't care about the minor issues. He'd come out to Hiawatha County for a larger purpose, so he found a cigar in his vest pocket and began to smoke while the businessman dealt with matters of the present. The sweet smell of tobacco smoke drifted into the ravine. "The first phase is to build the Nicollet Dam, which has proven to be a little more difficult than we first thought. Currently, Triton owns the entire western shore of the Blue Knife River, but you can't have a dam without actually spanning the river. That's why Mr. Douglas and Mr. Dobie came out here to acquire the southernmost acres. Hold on a second, Haggard interrupted. I thought the new laws were going to force all the Indians onto one reservation way up north. The White Earth Reservation, Morrison answered and spit a glob of tobacco and winced. You're right about the intent of the law, Oz, but after the tribal property was distributed to the individuals, it still needs to be sold by the individual. None of the Indians on this side of the reservation seem willing to sell. Not even with a little coercion? Haggard asked. Morrison chuckled. No, Oz. Luckily, we didn't have to stoop so low as to lynch anyone. I thought you were supposed to arrest one of the landowners for bootlegging, Haggard pressed. Big Squeak is easily spooked, Morrison admitted. Can't take away his land until there are formal criminal charges and a trial. Adam Thunderface has been willing to let us put a road through his property, and even a bridge, but we need his second lot for a dam. Halvar Dobie exhaled and turned to the nearby bushes. Did I hear whispers? Since leaving St. John, they'd been in thick woods with nary a bird or person in sight. The men talked as if they were in privacy. Haggard continued. Mr. Douglas, explain to me Delhut's plan again. As you know, Triton is not just about the three of you. 3 families represent Triton Corporation. The Tarrants from France, the Delhuts from Detroit, and the Sinclairs from Nova Scotia. Even though the 3 of you married Sinclairs, it's still one vote, and I represent Mr. Delhut in this matter with the support of the Tarrants. While Marquette and Stewart worried about their wealth, Haggard offered hereditary skepticism. You're only a goddamn lawyer, Douglas, and you're not getting our help until we understand what Delhut wants once the dam is built. And that is the same reason I'm here, to make sure. Douglas laughed it off. The Blue Knife River will serve as a glorified log chute to get lumber from Leech Lake Pineries through the processing mill at Split Rock. All that is a sleight of hand. In order for Oz to transition from a brickyard to a full-fledged quartz quarry, we need to regulate the water coming into Lake Manitou. Building a dam will allow logs to be wrangled right over these rapids. Morrison responded. So this dam will also let you keep your spring flooding from overflowing the banks of the Lake Manitou into Haggard's quarry. Why did you have to call it the Nicollet Dam? Mr. Delhut came up with the name. A tad arrogant, don't you think? Are you trying to provoke our enemies? Dobie asked when the others remained silent. He knew what had happened 60 years earlier. The Jesuits took another shot at the prize, bringing retribution from an even older and deadlier enemy, the Priory of Ormus. After Nicolet's death, the Jesuits and Priory weakened greatly as Eos grew stronger. This dam would be pretty much put an end to the reservation, wouldn't it? Marquette surmised. We are being watched. Dobie climbed off his horse discreetly. He took his attention to the river and began to study the bushes and trees. These morons need to keep their mouths shut. Show us the site and let's go back to town. In the reservation? Morrison repeated. No, but they'll lose some land. The water will be at the top of the ravine by this time next year. Dobie finished his scan of the nearby bushes before speaking his mind. Before any of this can happen, we need the eastern bank without a fuss. There's a Jesuit already sniffing around on behalf of the Chippewa. So do this lawfully, Morrison, or it'll blow up in our face. Be discreet. Morrison bent down, splashed some water on his face, and then shrugged. A few more months, and the Chippewa won't be a problem for us anymore. Trust me. It's not the Chippewa that worries me. The Nicollet Dam will certainly be as glorious as the bridge, Douglas said, turning his horse back toward St. John. A year from now, Morrison added as he mounted his horse, We'll be taking a road back into St. John, and the Chippewa will scurry back up the woods up north. Will I still be stuck in Minnesota a year from now? Halvar Dobie wondered as he and the others returned to civilization. Can we trust any of these Delhut men to do what is needed? What do you suppose that is? Ira Douglas asked after he'd traveled 100 yards. Morrison turned his big steed to investigate. It's a dream catcher. The Chippewa make them. Morrison smashed it with his ebony walking stick. If only it was that easy, Halvar Dobie decided.